Hi everybody, this is Mrs. Lehman. I'm not quite sure what to make of our intro. It sounds kind of negative. But anyway, welcome to Math with Mrs. Lehman. An exciting thing has happened. We have started Module 2. Yay! Sense the fake enthusiasm. All right, so what we did the other day is we learned how to add and subtract decimals, right? So sometimes we started with fractions, we needed to convert them into decimals, and the key thing when you're adding and subtracting decimals is to do what with the decimal point?
Line them up.
Line them up, very good. So today we're going to do something different. We are going to talk about multiplying, I'm just going to flip around a bit here, multiplying decimals. So I have the kids working right now at the back of their module book where we have some notes, and theirs is much neater than this line I'm going to draw. I'll do my best to draw a straight line. All right, so it says at the top, lesson topic, and really what we're working on is operations with decimals. So let's do some catch-up work from the other day. So we learned how to find the sum and difference of decimals, right? So that means what operations? Addition and subtraction. Very good. So let's write adding and subtracting decimals. And you guys already said what the big key thing is. We need to do what? Line them up. Line up the decimal points. You guys have been doing this for years without even being aware that you were doing it. Because whole numbers have a hidden decimal point that we don't typically write unless we need it, right, at the end of the whole number. So we've been lining those up and making sure our ones are over our ones, our tens are over our tens, hundreds over hundreds, and then now we're dealing with numbers that are less than 1, so we're dealing with our tenths, our hundredths, our thousandths, and making sure they're lined up as well. And just to be sure that we're doing that, we have to line up the decimal point. All right, so we can draw a line under this. That's what we covered the other day. Today what we're going to do is talk about multiplying decimals. Does anyone know what we call the answer to a multiplication product? I just gave it away. Let me say that again. Hopefully you weren't listening that carefully. What do we call the answer to a multiplication problem? Cadence.
A product.
Very good. A product. You know, if I had some really great editing software, it would be like that never happened. But I don't. And life doesn't really have good editing software, so I guess everyone can deal with it. So, so we're going to write products, or just product. All right. So when we are multiplying decimals to find the product, we have 3 steps. So our first step that we need to do is to set up the multiplication as if there were no decimal points. So regardless if there's decimals in it or not, you would set it up as if there weren't any. You obviously are still putting the decimal points in the problem. You're just not setting it up like we would for addition and subtraction where we line them up. We're just setting it up, you know, with our larger digit number on top and our smaller digit number on the bottom. and then we are, multiplying. So step 1 is to just set it up, not really paying attention to the fact if it has multiplication or decimal points or not. And then our second step is to simply multiply. Multiply like you normally would have before you knew anything about decimal points. And then the last thing that you need to do is after you multiply, you're going to count the number of decimal places. So in both of the numbers being multiplied, all right? So step 1, you're setting up the multiplication as if there were no decimal points. Step 2, you're going to do your normal multiplication. Step 3 is to figure out how many places you have past the decimal point, or how many decimal places you have in both of the numbers that you're multiplying. So you're going to have, depending on the problem, a different amount. And then your last step is to place the decimal point that number of jumps in from the end. Okay, so if we had 2 total decimal places in our multiplication problem, we're going to move the decimal place in 2 spots. Okay, we'll do some examples so that you can see this in action, but those are the 4 essential steps to multiplying decimals. Okay, really it's all about what are we doing with that decimal point at the end. All right, so let's give an example under here. I'm going to extend the page a little bit so that I have some room. I'll scroll this up in case anyone's still writing down the last 2 here. All right, so example 1. All right, let's say we had 9/10 times 4/10. All right, so we need to set this up like we would set this up if there were no decimal points. So 0.9 times 0.4. Now they just happen to line up, but that's not why we set it up like that. We just set it up like we're multiplying 9 times 4, okay? All right, so 4 times 9, 9 times 4, what do we get when we multiply that, Tori? 36, very good, so 36. Now, we need to count the number of decimal places in our numbers being multiplied. So we have 1 here, right? No one can see on the screen. There's 1 there, and there's 1 here, right? So we have how many total in that problem? 2. So we've got to start at the end here and move it in 1, 2 spots. So our answer is 0 and 36 hundredths. Yes, ma'am.
That's what I did all last year.
Yay! Oh, you guys are familiar with this already?
Yeah.
Oh, so you're telling me I'm doing this big lengthy lesson, you already know how to do it.
Yeah.
It's music to my ears, kids. All right. Good point, Tori. I like it. So anyway, let's do another one. So in this case, both of the numbers had decimal points. Let's try maybe, let me scroll down, extend the page. Example 2. Let's say we had 50 times 0.3. All right, so normally, well, not normally, but I guess what I'm trying to make the point of right here is you have 2 numbers being multiplied. If you have a number, and first of all, you have to put the one with the smallest number of digits on the bottom, really, when you're setting up your own multiplication like that. On a calculator, it's not going to matter, but when you're doing it yourself, you put the smaller number of digits on the bottom. In this case, they have the same number of digits, really. So what you would do is think about what's easiest to multiply on the bottom. When you have zeros on the bottom, when you're multiplying, it makes it super easy because you can just bring those zeros down. Okay, so we're going to put 50 on the bottom and 0.3 on the top. All right, so 0 times 3 is 0. We could go through it all that way, but really you can just put that 0 down. All right, then you're multiplying by 5. 5 times 3 is 15. Now, we have to count the decimal places. How many decimal places in here?
1.
Final answer?
3.
I'm hearing all kinds of crazy stuff. It's just 1. We only have 1 decimal place. Does everyone see this? 1 spot past the decimal. It's just 1. So we're going to move it in 1 spot so it would go right there. 15. Okay? Yeah, Sophia. Yes, I can scroll up a little bit. Are you on that one? Okay. Does that make sense, everyone? We're going to practice a little bit. We're going to do a few examples in your module, and then we're going to very quickly go over your homework, which was just simply adding and subtracting. Yes, ma'am?
I don't have any.
You don't have what? Oh, that's all right. We're done. You can always go to the next page if you run out of room. You got to go this way, kiddo. Alrighty? Okay, so is everybody all set with this? All right, let's go back to page 5. Page 5. This was your homework. And then this is the page I'm looking for, decimals. Tonight, your homework's page 8. We're getting all kinds of confused here, so right now I need you on page 5. All right? I flipped to the wrong page on the screen, so I just wanted to let the viewers know that wasn't the page we were actually on. Whatever. We're going to skip the beginning part of that because we're going to do multiplying down here. Calculate the product. So we have 200 times 32.6. So we've got to decide which one we're putting on the top and which one we're putting on the bottom. Do you want to put the 200 or the 32.6 on the bottom? Ava.
200, because it's got zeros.
Very good, yeah. It's going to make our life a little easier. So 32.6 times 200. Notice, we don't care where the decimal points are. We're stacking it up like we normally would if there weren't any decimal points. Step 2 is to multiply. So let's multiply. 0 can come down. This 0 can come down. 2 times 6 is 12. Carry our 1. 2 times 2 is 4. Plus 1 is, and 2 times 3 is 6. So that's what we have, but we're not done. We have to count the number of decimal places. How many decimal places am I at? 1. Very good. So we're going to move that in from the end. I'm going to show you. This is cool that I can do this on a smartboard. Hold on. So the decimal place starts here, right? But we got to move it in 1 spot. Okay? So our answer is 6,520. So the comma, make sure your commas and decimal points look different, goes between the 6 and the 5 here. Okay? Separates our hundreds and our thousands. Any questions on this? Why don't you guys go ahead and set up number 2. I'm going to pause the video while you work that out. All right, great job, guys. A lot of the kids got 11,060. Again, they set it up the number with the smallest number of digits. Went on the bottom here. They brought down those 2 zeros. 5 times 2 is 10. They wrote the 0, carried the 1. 5 times 1 is 5, plus 1 is 6. Wrote that down. 5 times 2 is 10. Wrote down the 0, carried the 1. 5 times 2 is 10, plus 1 is 11. They saw that there are 2 decimal places in that 12 hundredths, so they moved the decimal in from the end of that 2 spots to give us 11,060. So now we're going to review our homework on page 4. So if everybody could be on page 4, we're just going to quickly go through this. We don't have a ton of time. I think the kids did pretty well on it overall, so we're not going to spend a lot of time on it. All right, So as you're checking your paper, I want you to make sure that you have converted the fractions to decimals appropriately. And if you got that part right, then did you do the calculation part of it correctly? Because there's two essential skills here. The first one being converting fractions to decimals. The second one being able to add or subtract. All right, for the bottom two questions, you needed to know how to round. All right, so the first one, you should have had it set up as 381 and 1/10 as a decimal. We would write that as 0.1. 214 and 43 hundredths was pretty easy. Both of these were easy because they were already fractions with a denominator that is a power of 10. Yes?
I actually, because I wasn't here for math yesterday, I actually subtracted them.
You did a fraction. Okay, so now we'll just convert your answer to a to a decimal, okay? So to see if you did it right that way. So when you subtract that, you should have gotten, or when you subtract that, you should get 116 and 67 hundredths. Raise your hand if you got 116 and 67 hundredths. All right, very good. If you did not get it correct, I want you to look at yours. Did you get it wrong because you didn't convert these fractions to decimals correctly? Or did you get it wrong because you just subtracted wrong? You forgot to subtract. Well, that would do it. Okay, so check that out. Let's look at the next one. That was question A. Question B, we had 32 and 3/4. 32 and 3/4 would convert to 32.75. All right, and that would be 12 and 1/2, so 12.5. And you had to subtract these as well. 5 minus 0 is 5. 7 minus 5 is 2. Bring down that decimal point. 2 minus 2 is 0. 3 minus 1 is 2. So 20 and 25 hundredths was your answer for part B. Who here got that one correct? All right, any questions on that? Manson.
Okay, number 8. Shouldn't that be 166?
You're right. Oh my gosh, you are so right. Thank you. You know, guys, I haven't perfected being a robot.
You're not supposed to be a robot. You're human.
Yeah, you know, teachers make mistakes, and if there are teachers that claim that they don't make mistakes,
Test them.
they're lying, because we make mistakes all the time.
You're supposed to make mistakes.
Now I want Ava. Ava will be my proof. Did I have that written down correctly here?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I misspoke. And then I wrote it down wrong on the smart board, but I do know how to add and subtract, I promise you. All right, so the next one, part C. Thank you for being understanding, viewers. All right, 517 and 74 hundredths. And you are adding 312 and 3 hundredths. All right, so you're finding the sum of these two numbers. Let's see if... Thank you, Manson, by the way, for checking that out. All right, so 4 plus 3 is 7. That's 7. That's 9. I'm double checking my work extra carefully now. 829 and 77 hundredths. For somebody who didn't want to be in the video, you did a great job of catching that mistake. All right. D. What was that? Instincts kick in. Cute. So 632. Now, this 25, you'd have to scale it up 4 times, right, to get it to be out of 100. So 16 times 4 is 64 hundredths. And then, oops, I don't want there. All right, 32.3, add the 0 at the end. Add those up, you should have gotten 664 and 94 hundredths. All right, and the last one here should have been your answer. I'm just going to give it because we're pretty well out of time. 208 and 16 hundredths. Now down here on these last two, what you needed to do is, hold on one sec. You had to round to the nearest hundredth. So you had to actually go to the thousandths place and then round. So to do that, you needed a calculator because 3/7 is not going to scale up to be out of 10, so you take 3 divided by 7, you get this big number, etc. I can explain that more in a second. Sorry about that, guys. So I ran out of time in the last class to talk about this, but we have the whole number 422, and then we have to convert 3/7 into a decimal. So in order to do that, because we don't have a number that we can convert to a tenth, not a tenth, to a power of 10, so a tenth, a hundredth, a thousandth, we're going to use our calculator, top divided by bottom. So 3 divided by 7 is 0.428571428571426. We're not going to write all that down. You are asked to round your answer to the nearest hundredth. So what you're going to do is go to the thousandth spot. So it would be 0.428. That will give us something to round when we get to the when we're rounding to the hundredth. Minus 367, and then 5/9. So you take 5 divided by 9, you're going to get 0.55 repeating. So we're just going to write down to the thousandth spot. The more you round, the more inexact your answer becomes. So that's why we don't want to, round to the hundredth, and then keep it like that. We want to go to the thousandths and then round to the hundredths. So you had to subtract this. This is 3. You have to borrow here. This is going to become 3. That's 12. 12 minus 5 is 8. Ooh, not 8, 7. Jeez. You all snickering in the background as well. All right, so 7. 3 minus, you guys are funny. All right, 13 minus 5 is 8, and then keep going. Yawning in the background is fun too. All right, so 1 minus 6. Yeah, please stop. All right, so you should have gotten 54 and 873 thousandths, but we need to round. So when you're rounding, you look to the hundredth spot, right? And then you go 1 past it. So we're looking at the thousandth spot to decide if that's 5 or above. We're going to shove that up. If not, we're going to let it go. So this is going to be let go. So 54.87. We're going to drop that 3 off. Okay? And then the next one, similar process, 23 and 1/5. That you can either take 1 divided by 5 and get 0.2. So I can demonstrate that. 1 divided by 5 equals 0.2. Or you can say 1/5 will scale up to, by multiplying by 2 here, multiply by 2, 2/10. So 23.2 plus 45 and 7/8. You're not going to be able to scale that up to get it with a denominator of a power of 10. So 7 divided by 8 is going to give you 0.875. And you're adding those, you're finding the sum. So you're just going to put 0, 0, 5, 7, 10, carry your 1, 4, 6. So you should have gotten 64 and 75 hundredths. Did I goof up there? Yeah, I did. I put a 4 instead of a 9. Yep, that would be goofy. Why did I say 4? I don't know, 69 and 75 hundredths. So you're going to look at the thousandths place. That is 5 or above. So we're going to round this to 69 and 8 hundredths. All right, so anyway, that's how you would approach those bottom 2 questions. Thank you for watching. Hopefully this helped with learning how to multiply decimals and reviewing how to convert fractions to decimals and then finding the sum or difference. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks for watching.